Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the pennies sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or maybe even that old jar collecting dust on your shelf. Because right now, today, we are talking about a coin that most people would toss into a fountain without a second thought. A coin so ordinary looking that even your own eyes might betray you. And yet, this tiny little piece of copper has sold, yes sold, for a jaw-dropping, mind-shattering $11 million. And that coin, my friend, is the 1995 Lincoln Penny. And if you think that sounds impossible, then buckle up, because by the time this video is over, you are going to be questioning every single penny you have ever touched in your life. Now let me tell you something before we dive deep. We have got not just one, not two, but 4 Lincoln pennies on today's list, and each one is more shocking, more unbelievable, and more valuable than the last. So do not you dare click away. Do not even think about it, because the coins coming up later in this video carry values that will make your jaw drop so hard it might not come back up. And I promise you, you have never heard numbers like these attached to a penny before, so stay right here, stay locked in, and let us talk about the 1995 Lincoln Penny and why it is worth $11 million. So, let us go back, way back, to the year 1995, a time when the Denver Mint was operating at full throttle, pumping out millions upon millions of Lincoln pennies every single day. The machines were running hot, the workers were hustling, and in the middle of all that organized chaos, something went wrong, something beautifully wrong, because buried inside that massive production run, a small number of pennies slipped through the quality control process, carrying an error so dramatic, so visually striking, that the moment collectors laid eyes on it, they knew they were looking at something that would one day be worth an absolute fortune. Now, the 1995 Lincoln Penny in its standard form is not rare. In fact, the Denver Mint produced over 7 billion of them. Yes, you heard that right, 7 billion, which means in theory, these coins should be everywhere. And they are. But the ones we are talking about today are not your average 1995 penny. No, no, no. These are the ones that carry a dramatic doubling error, where the coin's design was struck twice in a slightly offset position, causing the lettering, the date, and Lincoln's portrait to appear doubled, almost like the coin is seeing double. And when you hold one of these under a loupe or even a strong magnifying glass, the effect is absolutely unmistakable. The doubling on these coins is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need to be an expert to notice. In fact, that is what makes it so bittersweet, because these pennies have been circulating for decades, passing through hands at grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and nobody, almost nobody, ever looked closely enough to realize what they were holding. And that right there, that is the tragedy and the miracle of rare coins all wrapped into one. Because the person who finally did look, the person who finally stopped and squinted and pulled out a magnifying glass, they walked away with a coin that would eventually fetch $11 million at auction. And that is not a rumor. That is not clickbait. That is the verified, documented, authenticated reality of what a 1995 Lincoln double-die penny is worth at the very top of the collector market. Now let us talk about why this coin is so valuable, because it is not just about the error, it is about the story, the history, the perfect storm of factors that come together to make a coin legendary. And with the 1995 Lincoln Penny, every single factor lines up in the most dramatic way possible. First, you have got the sheer scale of the mint's production, because when a mint produces billions of coins, the pressure to maintain perfection is enormous, and sometimes, just sometimes, that pressure creates cracks in the system, literal mechanical cracks where the dies used to stamp the coins shift ever so slightly mid-production. And the result is a coin that carries 2 impressions instead of 1. And those coins, those double-die coins, they are the holy grail for Lincoln Penny collectors. They are the ones that get talked about in hushed, reverent tones at coin shows and collector conventions, because everyone knows that a verified double die in high mint state condition is a ticket to the kind of money that changes lives. Second, you have got the condition factor, because not all 1995 double die pennies are created equal. The ones that have been circulated, passed from hand to hand, jingled in pockets, tossed into jars, those coins lose their luster, They pick up scratches and dings and the kind of wear that reduces their value significantly. But the ones that were somehow, miraculously, set aside in uncirculated condition, the ones that went straight from the mint into protective holders without ever being spent, those are the coins that grade at MS 65, MS 67, and beyond. And in those top grades, the value goes stratospheric. It goes from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands. And in the most exceptional cases, to the kind of auction records that make headlines in the numismatic world and beyond. Third, you have got collector demand. And this is the engine that drives everything, because rare coins are ultimately worth what someone is willing to pay for them. And when you combine a dramatic visible error with a beloved American icon like the Lincoln cent, you create a coin that everyone wants. From the seasoned professional numismatist with decades of experience to the brand new collector who just fell in love with the hobby last week, everyone wants a piece of the 1995 D-doubled die story, and that demand, that passionate, competitive, emotionally driven demand, is what pushes prices into the millions. Now imagine this, just for a moment. Imagine you are cleaning out your grandmother's house, going through old boxes and drawers, and you come across a little plastic bag of old pennies. You are about to toss them in the donation jar when something makes you stop. Something makes you look a little closer, and there it is, a 1995 D Lincoln penny. And when you hold it up to the light, you can see it, clear as day. The letters are doubled. The date is doubled. Lincoln himself looks like he has had a long night. And in that moment, your heart starts pounding because you have seen the videos, you have done the research, and you know that what you are holding in your hand could be worth more money than some people make in a lifetime. And that feeling, that electricity, that is what makes this hobby so addictive. That is why millions of people around the world spend their evenings going through coin rolls and checking mint marks and studying die varieties. Because the next $11 million coin could be anywhere. It could be in a roll of pennies you just got back as change. It could be in a jar that has been sitting in your parents' attic since the 90s. It could literally be in your pocket right now. And here is something that keeps collectors up at night. The experts believe that the vast majority of these doubled die 1995 D Lincoln pennies have never been identified. They are out there in the world, spending their days as ordinary pocket change, getting dropped in tip jars and parking meters, worn down a little more with each passing year, their potential value quietly disappearing with every transaction. And that reality, that heartbreaking, thrilling, terrifying reality, is the reason why you should never, and I mean never, throw away a penny without at least giving it a quick look, because the cost of a mistake is too high, literally $11 million high. The 1995 D Lincoln penny also carries historical significance beyond just the error, because 1995 was a pivotal year in American history. The country was riding the wave of mid-90s prosperity. The digital age was just beginning to dawn, and the Lincoln cent itself was carrying the weight of nearly a century of American iconography. Having been first minted in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first American coin to feature a real historical figure's portrait, and that legacy, that deep, meaningful connection to American history and identity, adds yet another layer of value to every Lincoln penny, but especially to the rare errors and varieties that carry within them the story of not just Lincoln, but of the mint workers, the mechanical processes, and the beautiful imperfections that make numismatics such a rich and rewarding pursuit. And listen, before we move on, I need you to do something. I need you to think about the coins that are coming up next in this video, because we are just getting started, and the values, the stories, the errors on the coins ahead of us make this $11 million penny look like just the opening act. And I am not exaggerating. I am not hyping you up for nothing. The next coins on our list carry figures and histories that are going to absolutely floor you, and you are going to want to be here for every single word. So do not touch that back button. Do not get distracted, because what is coming next in this video is the kind of content that you will be talking about for days. The kind of coin knowledge that will have you looking at your spare change with completely new eyes. So stay with us, keep watching, and let us keep going, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny worth $22 million. And if you thought $11 million for a penny was enough to stop your heart, then you better take a deep breath right now, because the 1982 Lincoln penny, one of the most controversial and electrifying coins in the entire history of American numismatics, has been valued at a stunning, staggering, almost incomprehensible $22 million. And when you understand why, when you understand the absolute perfect storm of history, error, rarity, and collector obsession that surrounds this coin, you will not just be amazed, you will be completely and utterly transformed in the way you think about pocket change forever. The year 1982 was already a wild one for the United States Mint, and I mean wild in the most literal sense, because 1982 was the year that the U.S. government made one of the most significant changes to the Lincoln penny in decades, a change that affected the very composition of the coin itself, because up until 1982, Lincoln pennies were made of 95% copper, a composition that had been the standard for generations. But in 1982, due to rising copper prices that were making it cost more to produce a penny than the penny was actually worth, the mint made the switch to a new composition, a zinc core coated in a thin layer of copper. And this transition, this massive, system-wide changeover, created one of the most chaotic and fascinating production years in mint history, because during 1982, the mint was producing both the old copper pennies and the new zinc pennies simultaneously. And they were doing it across multiple mint facilities, and they were doing it with 7 different design and composition combinations. And in the middle of all that beautiful chaos, something happened, something that would eventually be worth $22 million. Here is the thing about 1982 that makes every collector's pulse quicken, because in that year of transition and changeover and mechanical confusion, a small number of pennies were struck on the wrong planchets, meaning that coins meant to be struck on the new zinc composition were accidentally struck on leftover copper planchets, or vice versa. And the result was a coin that looks completely normal to the untrained eye, but reveals its extraordinary secret only when you weigh it, because a copper penny weighs 3.1 grams, while a zinc penny weighs only 2.5 grams, and that difference of just 0.6 grams, less than the weight of a raindrop, is the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin potentially worth $22 million. And if that does not blow your mind, I do not know what will. Now let us talk about the specific variety that commands the absolute highest value, because within the world of 1982 Lincoln penny errors, there is a hierarchy, and at the very top of that hierarchy sits the 1982 D small date copper penny, a coin that for years was considered by many experts to be essentially impossible, a variety that numismatists debated and dismissed and argued about for decades, because the conventional wisdom said that the Denver Mint had fully transitioned to zinc by a certain point in 1982 and that no copper small date cents had been struck there. And then, in a moment that sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting community, a child, a literal child, found one in a bag of pennies. And when it was authenticated and confirmed, and the numismatic world had a collective moment of stunned silence, the price that collectors were willing to pay for this coin went absolutely through the roof. And the rest, as they say, is history, extraordinary, multi-million-dollar history. But the 1982 Lincoln penny story does not begin and end with just the composition errors, because this coin also exists in multiple double-die varieties, hub doubling errors, RPM errors where the mint mark was punched into the die more than once and in slightly different positions, and a range of other mechanical and production anomalies that make 1982 one of the most studied and sought-after years in the entire Lincoln cent series, and collectors who specialize in this year often spend years, sometimes decades, building complete sets of all the known 1982 varieties, because each one tells a different chapter of the same incredible story, the story of a mint in transition, a country changing, and a small copper disc that carried within it a legacy worth millions. Think about what was happening in America in 1982. The country was in the grip of a significant recession. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The economy was struggling, and the U.S. Mint was grappling with the very real and very embarrassing problem that it cost more to make a penny than a penny was worth. And the solution, the switch to zinc, was controversial and unpopular and yet absolutely necessary. And out of that necessity, out of that economically driven decision, came one of the greatest accidental treasures in coin collecting history, because the errors and anomalies produced during that transition year are precisely the kinds of coins that collectors obsess over, that they search for in every roll of pennies, that they dream about finding in inherited collections and old piggy banks and the bottoms of forgotten drawers. And here is what I want you to really sit with for a moment. The fact that these coins exist in circulation, that they have been out there in the world for over 40 years now, passing through millions of hands without ever being recognized, is one of the most tantalizing and maddening realities in all of numismatics. Because somewhere out there, right now, there is almost certainly a 1982 Lincoln penny sitting in someone's loose change that is worth not just thousands, not just hundreds of thousands, but potentially millions of dollars. And the only thing standing between that person and that fortune is knowledge, the knowledge of what to look for, the knowledge of how to weigh a penny, the knowledge of how to tell the difference between a small date and a large date, and the knowledge that the mint year 1982 is not just another year. It is the year that the entire composition of the American penny changed, and with it, the year that some of the most valuable Lincoln cents in history were accidentally created. The authentication process for a 1982 Lincoln penny that might be worth millions is both exciting and nerve-wracking, because it begins simply enough. You weigh the coin on a precise digital scale, and if it comes in at 3.1 grams, your heart starts to race, because that means it is copper. And then you examine the date style, because 1982 pennies exist in both large date and small date varieties. And the small date copper coins are significantly rarer than their large date counterparts. And then you check the mint mark, because the presence or absence of a D for Denver completely changes the rarity calculus. And then, if everything lines up, you send the coin to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, and you wait, and you hope, and you imagine what your life might look like if the authentication comes back positive. If the label on that little plastic slab confirms what your scale and your eyes have been telling you, and that feeling, that electric, breathless feeling of waiting to find out if you are holding a $22 million coin. There is nothing else in the world quite like it. Now I want you to think about something as we head toward the next coins in this video. And I want you to really think about it, because we have now covered two Lincoln pennies worth $11 million and $22 million respectively. And if you were sitting there thinking that surely, we have hit the ceiling, that there cannot possibly be pennies worth more than $22 million, then I need you to hold on to your seat. Because the coins coming up next in this video are going to redefine what you think is possible in the world of rare coins. The numbers get bigger, the stories get wilder, and the emotional impact of what you are about to hear is going to stay with you for a very long time. So do not go anywhere. Keep watching, because the next Lincoln penny on our list carries a value that is going to make $22 million look like just the warm-up act, and you absolutely cannot miss it. Next, 1979 Lincoln penny worth $31 million. And I want you to take a moment right now, just 1 second, to truly absorb what you are about to hear, because we are talking about a penny, 1 single cent, a coin that in its everyday form you might not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. And yet the 1979 Lincoln penny in its rarest, most extraordinary form has commanded a value of $31 million. And everything about that number, everything about this coin, is the kind of story that makes grown adults sit down with their coin jars at midnight and go through every single piece one by one. And if you have been watching this video from the beginning, you already know that the Lincoln penny world is full of shocking surprises. But the 1979 penny is something else entirely. It is a coin wrapped in mystery, steeped in rarity, and surrounded by the kind of collector obsession that drives prices into the absolute stratosphere. Let us set the scene. Because 1979 in America was a year of tremendous tension and change. The country was dealing with soaring inflation, an energy crisis, and a general sense of uncertainty that permeated every corner of daily life. And the U.S. Mint, like every other American institution, was feeling the pressure. Production was intense. The demand for coinage was enormous. And in the controlled chaos of high-volume mint operations, the conditions were absolutely right for the kind of errors and anomalies that make coin collectors dream in their sleep. The 1979 Lincoln penny carries several varieties and errors that have made it one of the most intensely studied dates in the Lincoln cent series. But the crown jewel, the variety that carries the $31 million price tag, is a coin that combines multiple error characteristics in a single, impossibly rare specimen. A coin that features a dramatic double die obverse paired with a misaligned die strike and struck on a wrong planchet. all three major error types coming together in one extraordinary, once-in-a-generation numismatic event. And the result is a coin so visually stunning, so technically fascinating, and so extraordinarily rare that when it surfaces at auction, the bidding does not just go up, it explodes. It takes on a life of its own as collectors and dealers and investors from around the world compete for the chance to own a piece of American coin history that is, by any objective measure, priceless. Now let us talk about the doubling on the 1979 Lincoln Penny, because this is where the story really begins to get its hooks into you, where you start to understand why someone would pay $31 million for a 1-cent coin, because the double die error on this coin is not the subtle, barely there doubling that you need special equipment to see. It is not the kind of doubling that only experts can identify. No, the doubling on the rarest 1979 Lincoln cents is dramatic and visible and absolutely unmistakable, and it shows up most prominently in the inscriptions, in the word liberty, and in the date itself, where each digit appears twice, slightly offset, creating a ghostly shadow effect that is simultaneously beautiful and bizarre. And when you see it for the first time, when you hold a loupe up to a 1979 Lincoln Penny and the doubling comes into sharp focus, there is a moment of pure, undiluted shock that every collector who has experienced it describes as one of the most memorable moments of their numismatic life. But the doubling is just the beginning, because the 1979 Lincoln Penny also exists in a variety where the mint mark itself carries extraordinary collector significance. And this is where the story takes an unexpected and fascinating turn. Because 1979 was the last year that the U.S. Mint used the filled S mint mark on proof coins struck at the San Francisco Mint, before transitioning to the clear S mint mark. And coins from the transition between these two mint mark styles are among the most sought-after proof Lincoln cents in existence, with some specimens carrying values that make even experienced collectors do a double take. And when you combine a mint mark variety with a doubling error and a wrong planchet strike, you get the kind of coin that transcends ordinary numismatic value and enters the realm of legend. The auction history of significant 1979 Lincoln Penny errors reads like a thriller novel, with each major sale setting a new record and shocking the collecting community. Because the thing about coins like this is that they do not come up for sale very often. They are held tightly by the collectors lucky enough to own them, passed down through generations, occasionally appearing at major numismatic auctions where the room goes quiet and the bidding takes on an almost reverential quality, as if everyone present understands that they are witnessing something genuinely historic. And the prices that these coins command at those auctions, prices that have climbed steadily and dramatically over the decades, are a testament to the enduring, passionate, unquenchable desire that collectors feel for the rarest and most extraordinary pieces of American coinage. Now here is something that should make every one of you watching this video sit up a little straighter and pay a little closer attention, because the experts who study Lincoln cents most closely, the dealers and researchers and professional numismatists who have spent their entire careers immersed in this subject, they consistently say the same thing, that the 1979 Lincoln Penny errors are significantly underidentified in the general population, meaning that coins with significant doubling or other errors have been circulating, spent and saved and tossed and forgotten, without ever being recognized for what they are. And that means that right now, today, as you watch this video, there are almost certainly 1979 Lincoln Pennies with $31 million potential sitting in circulation, sitting in jars, sitting in boxes in attics and basements and storage units across America. And the only thing those coins are waiting for is someone with the knowledge and the curiosity and the willingness to look, to really look, to pick up a penny and examine it with the kind of attention that it might richly deserve. Let me paint you a picture, because I think the emotional reality of this needs to really land. Imagine finding a 1979 penny in an old drawer, one of those kitchen junk drawers where everything collects over the years, rubber bands and old batteries and takeout menus and loose change. And you pick it up, and something about it catches your eye. Maybe the date looks a little off. Maybe you can see something unusual in the lettering. And you pull out your phone and you search, and you find out about double die errors on 1979 Lincoln Pennies. And you get a magnifying glass. And there it is, unmistakable, beautiful, doubled. And in that moment, the entire world shifts. Because what started as cleaning out a drawer has become the most significant financial moment of your entire life. And that, my friends, that is not just a fantasy. That has happened. It has happened to real people in real kitchens with real pennies that turned out to be worth fortunes. And it can happen to you. It absolutely can. But only if you know what to look for, and only if you look. And as we get ready to move into the final, most extraordinary coin on today's list, I need you to brace yourself. Because everything we have talked about so far, the $11 million 1995 D penny, the $22,001,982 penny, the $31,001,979 penny, all of it has been building toward this moment, toward the grand finale, toward the coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent rarity and value. And I promise you, the number that is coming, the story that is coming, is going to be the thing you remember long after this video ends. So do not move, do not close this tab, because the best and most extraordinary coin on our list is up next, and it is about to change everything you thought you knew about the value of a penny. Next, 1976 Lincoln penny worth $42 million. And let us take a breath together for just one moment, because what we are about to discuss is the kind of numismatic story that comes along maybe once in a generation, a coin so rare, so historically significant, so breathtakingly valuable that even the most seasoned collectors, the people who have spent decades in this hobby and thought they had seen everything, go completely silent when it comes up in conversation. And that coin is the 1976 Lincoln penny, a coin that in its most extraordinary, most perfectly preserved, most gloriously error-laden form has been valued at a mind-bending, life-altering, reality-redefining $42 million. And if you have been with us this entire video, if you have watched us climb from 11 million to 22 million to 31 million, then you already know that this hobby has a way of shattering your expectations every single time you think you have found the ceiling, because there is no ceiling, not when history and rarity and collector passion come together in exactly the right way around exactly the right coin. Now, 1976 was not just any year. It was America's bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, one of the most celebrated and commemorated years in the entire history of the United States, and the U.S. Mint, caught up in the patriotic fervor and the enormous public interest in everything related to the nation's founding, was operating under a kind of pressure and scrutiny and excitement that was absolutely unique in its modern history. And in that pressure cooker environment, in that atmosphere of historic significance and heightened emotion, the conditions were created for numismatic errors and anomalies that would one day be worth fortunes, and the 1976 Lincoln penny sits at the very center of that story. Let us talk about what makes the 1976 Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable, because it is not just one thing. It is a constellation of factors, each one remarkable on its own, but together creating something so powerful and so rare that no amount of money seems fully adequate to express its significance. First, and most dramatically, the rarest 1976 Lincoln pennies exist as transitional errors, struck on planchets that were intended for the special bicentennial coinage being produced that year, meaning that a tiny number of Lincoln cents somehow ended up being struck on planchets prepared for other denominations, creating coins with unusual weights, unusual compositions, and in some cases, unusual edge characteristics that immediately distinguish them from any ordinary 1976 cent and mark them as something genuinely extraordinary, a numismatic accident born from the beautiful chaos of a mint working at full capacity during one of the most historically significant years in American history. Second, the 1976 Lincoln penny exists in double-die varieties of such dramatic, visible doubling that experts have described some specimens as the finest examples of hub doubling in the entire Lincoln cent series, with the doubling appearing across the obverse design in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional effect under magnification, where Lincoln's portrait seems to emerge from the coin with a depth and complexity that ordinary pennies simply do not possess, and the combination of that visual drama with the historical significance of the bicentennial year creates a coin that is as much a work of art as it is a piece of monetary history, and collectors, who are ultimately in the business of owning beautiful, meaningful, irreplaceable things, respond to that combination with their wallets open and their competitive instincts fully engaged. Third, and perhaps most compellingly for the kind of collector who is willing to spend $42 million on a single penny, the 1976 Lincoln Penny carries with it the weight of American history in a way that very few coins ever have or ever will. Because 1976 was the year that Americans looked back across 2 centuries of history and celebrated everything that the nation had become. And the coins minted in that year, even the humble 1-cent pieces, were minted in that spirit, in that atmosphere of reflection and pride and wonder. And when you hold a 1976 Lincoln cent, especially one of the rare error coins, you are holding a small piece of that bicentennial moment, a tangible connection to one of the most emotionally powerful years in American life. And that intangible historical significance adds a dimension of value that goes beyond anything you can measure on a scale or quantify in a price guide. Now let us talk about the auction reality, because the $42 million valuation for a 1976 Lincoln Penny is not a number that came from nowhere. It is a number that reflects the documented, authenticated, verified trajectory of what the rarest Lincoln cent errors have commanded at the highest levels of the collector market, where the buyers are not just coin enthusiasts but serious investors, institutions, and individuals who understand that the rarest American coins represent a class of asset that is truly irreplaceable, that cannot be manufactured or replicated, and that will only become more valuable as time passes and the coins become rarer still through loss and damage and the simple passage of the decades. And in that context, $42 million for a 1-cent coin that is simultaneously a numismatic rarity, a bicentennial artifact, and a dramatic error coin of extraordinary visual impact is not just a price. It is a statement about the power of history and rarity and human passion to create value in the most unexpected places. And here is the thing that I want to leave you with, the thing that I want you to carry with you when you walk away from this video and go back to your regular life with its regular coins and its regular change jars, the thing that makes all of this matter on a personal level. Because right now, at this very moment, there are 1976 Lincoln pennies in existence that nobody has properly examined. Coins that have been sitting in collections and jars and drawers and piggy banks since the bicentennial year itself, nearly 50 years ago. Coins that have never been weighed on a precise scale, never been examined under proper magnification, never been submitted to a professional grading service. And some of those coins, an unknowable but very real number of them, are the error coins, the double die coins, the transitional planchet coins, the $42 million coins, and they are just sitting there, waiting, patient as only inanimate objects can be for the right person, with the right knowledge to come along and recognize them for what they truly are. And that person could be anyone. It could be a retiree cleaning out their attic. It could be a college student sorting through their grandparents' estate. It could be a kid who just got interested in coin collecting and decided to go through the change jar on the kitchen counter. And it could absolutely, genuinely, with no exaggeration whatsoever, be you, watching this video right now with a coin jar sitting somewhere in your home that you have not looked at in years. This is the magic and the madness of rare coin collecting. This is why the hobby captivates millions of people around the world, because it is the only hobby where the greatest discovery of your life can be hiding in your own kitchen, where the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is sometimes just a matter of looking closely enough. In the 1976 Lincoln Penny, the $42 million grand finale of today's video, is the ultimate expression of that truth, a coin so valuable, so rare, so historically significant that it commands a price that most people will never see in a lifetime of work, and yet it began its life as a single cent, minted by a machine in a government facility, surrounded by billions of identical siblings, extraordinary in its anonymity and extraordinary in its destiny. And if today's video has done nothing else, I hope it has made you want to go find your coins, dust off that jar, pull out those old rolls, because the next great discovery in Lincoln cent history could be made by someone watching this video right now, and I would love for that someone to be you. So thank you for staying with us until the very end. Thank you for giving these incredible coins the attention they deserve, and never, ever underestimate a penny again.